Hey, it's Matt Pinfield, and this is New and Approved on KLOS, and I am here with Rick Nielsen of Cheap Trick. Rick, it is so good to see you, and always great to catch up with you, man.
Oh, you look better than ever, and you look better than ever.
Now, thank you for that. I appreciate it, Rick. I worked really hard on it. It's funny, there was a TV show that came out recently that was shot 2 years ago, and I look like a different human being on it. It's crazy, But I'm
You look
excited.
trim and fit.
What's that? I'm sorry.
You look trim and fit.
Yeah, I worked really hard on it. But, I got to say, I'm so excited about this new record, In Another World. We've been playing Light Up the Fire a lot here at KLOS. It's a great single. And Rick, tell me, so the album was actually recorded before the pandemic, and you guys decided at that point to wait until you could hit the road and things kind of calm down, right? Was all of it done before?
Most of it was done before, except the sequencing and the cover. But the record itself had been recorded over the last couple of years, actually.
It's cool because it's there's so many great songs on it, and one of the things that I love is that you covered John Lennon's "Give Me Some Truth" on the record, originally from the Imagine album. And the story came out recently. This incredible story about when you were playing in the studio with your old producer Jack Douglas, with John Lennon, and you did a version of "I'm Losing You." There was a story that came out about how he'd wished you had actually played on Cold Turkey. Can you tell me that story?
Well, I got asked to, Bunny and I got asked to play on, which turned out to be the Double Fantasy record. And I came up with this riff for the song Losing You. And, after we had played together a little bit there, I went in the studio to play a little guitar part over it. And John and Jack Douglas and Yoko and Bunny, they were all in the booth. And Lennon said to those guys, "God, I wish I would have had Rick on Losing You on
Cold Turkey.
Cold
Right?
Turkey." He said Clapton froze or froze up, because he plays the same riff over and over. It's just fine, but he liked what I was doing on that record, and I think they liked what we were doing. Kind of fattening up the sound of the record.
I think it's amazing. That must have been incredible for you, Rick, being a Beatles fan all those years, and you've done some incredible Beatles covers over your career. So that must have been an incredible experience. Did you find that out like literally right after it happened? Did they tell you that night, or was it something that this story came out years later?
We were going to Japan the very next day, and so Bunny came up to me and said, "Holy cow, you really like that?" It's like, well, give me some details here, please. And it's like, so I heard about it, but I didn't think anything of it until later. It didn't really kind of dawn on me because I was just in there playing and not thinking too much about it. It was like I called him John, and we talked about guitars, we talked about mellotrons, and we talked guy to guy stuff. It was the day that Dax, my son, was born. He was born that morning, and so I was thinking about that too. And plus, I'm working with John Lennon. Holy cow! It's like the ultimate. Better than playing with Elvis.
Yeah, it's amazing. So what memories? And of course, things were going at the speed of light back then too for the band. Everything was happening, right?
Yeah, it's like we'd had some big hits, and we were going back to Japan the next day. It was like I don't think that John and Yoko really knew about too much about us. It's like who's got time to know all that kind of junk? But it was like. We went in just as we were. We were neither of us were session men, and I don't think John Lennon had any of our Cheap Trick records. But while I was talking with him, he'd said to Jack, about maybe doing a whole record with us, and because Robin was coming back to sing background vocals on the record, and we went back to to New York to do that, and by then they'd already finished it. So Robin never got to be on it, and then we were not put on it for about 10 years later when they put out the original track.
Yeah, with the extended box set version of
Yeah,
Double
it's like
Fantasy.
we couldn't really talk about it because we weren't on it. It was like, hey, I played with John Lennon. Well, where? We never heard it. It's like you couldn't brag about something that wasn't released. So, and when we were doing it, it was supposed to be a big secret.
Yeah, well, it's great that you had Steve Jones, the legendary Steve Jones from Jonesy's Jukebox right here on KLOS, and the Pistols play on that version of Give Me Some Truth, too. It was cool because, Generation X and Billy Idol had done that song back in the original punk era, too. So how did that work out where you ended up getting Steve to play on the song?
Well, we'd done Jonesy's Jukebox before, and since we were fans of the Sex Pistols, we knew all their songs. And so while we were doing the original show, we said, hey, Steve, we know all these songs. So we were in the studio and we played them, and I think we played them, pretty much note perfect. And he was like, actually made him smile. So it's like, so then we got invited back, and when we were there, we had just recorded the Give Me Some Truth, and Robin and I were sitting there and playing that because you could do it, fairly well acoustically, or not with a whole band. And he started playing along with it, and he had that perfect sloppy feel like we have. And all of a sudden, we said, hey, Steve, you want to play on this record? Oh, sure. It's like, yeah. No managers involved, no nothing. We just ask him, okay. And before you know it, we sent him the stems of the song that we had done, and he played on it. It's like, so now we're friends for life.
I think it's great. One of the things when we were in the studio together, I was visiting you in the studio in New York City, and we had this great conversation that I wanted to talk about here because I know what an Anglophile you were. And as a young guy, to find out what was going on in England, like in the late 60s, mid-60s, you had a subscription to the big weekly music papers, the NME and Melody Maker and Sounds, and used to get them sent. And you told me this story that I've loved that I want you to tell for people who've never heard it before about when you and Tom went over to England. I remember the story about you guys being in a hotel and having to put like money for if you could that story's incredible. First of all, let's go back to the first part of that. Tell me about that passion as an Anglophile for all that English music, and how did you figure out you could order magazines to get ahead of like what was really happening in the States when you were younger?
I would get Melody Maker and NME, and then I noticed, like, even though I had a subscription, it's like it was always 6 weeks late because it was shipped over by boat. And so I said, well, I'm going to get the extra money together. And I think it was like $105 to get it airmailed. So I would have the issues the same time that they were out in England, like a couple of days late. It's like, I wanted to know what was going on. I wanted to know what's going on now, not, after the shows that already had passed and what's going on. It's like, I wanted to know what's going on daily or weekly. And by getting it airmail, I did. I felt like it was, next week at the Marquee Club. Oh, good. Not like 6 weeks later. And then you find out, oh, geez, it's too late. I can't do anything about it. So I did that just to know what was going on, because back then the writers, I think it was Chris Welch was one of the writers that I always liked, because by reading, you could see and you could feel what was going on there. Unlike a lot of the writers today, it's like they just slag this and slag that. I could feel how it was to see yes in print, And so then when I went over, I got to see this stuff straight up. Tom and I landed in 1968. And we had booked a place at the Inverness Court Hotel at Queensway in Bayswater. And as we were walking in the hotel, Saber Dance by Love Sculpture, which was Dave Edmunds, was playing. It's like, this is so cool. then we get to our room, and to have any heat in the room, we had to put shillings in this machine so there'd be heat in there.
In other words, you had to keep putting coins. It's like putting nickels and dimes in this thing in order to stay warm in this English hotel, right?
Yeah. So it was like, we didn't care. At that time, we bought Beggar's Banquet and the White Album, and then went a couple blocks away to a used records place and bought a little turntable, like one of those little tiny ones you in the old days, we put 45s on it. And we sat in the room and listened to that stuff on just this little tiny speaker. And then every night we'd go out to different stuff. We went to the Roundhouse. We went to the Marquee Club. The stuff that we'd read about.
Who'd you go see while you were there, Rick? Was there anybody in particular?
Sorry?
Who did you get to go see? What artists on the nights you and Tom Peterson would go out? I love the story about you guys buying Beggar's Banquet and the White Album, 68, listening to it attentively in that hotel room. Try to stay warm. It's the best story ever. But so what were those other nights like when you were going out? What kind of things were you seeing live?
I saw a Family with Roger Chapman. And then we ended up we ended up learning a couple of their songs. And let's see, we saw The Gun. They had a song. It's the two Gurvitz brothers. Race with the Devil, I think it was called. It was, fancy guitar stuff. I saw Gary Moore. He was in the band Skid Row at the time. It's like, besides playing all this great stuff, he puts down the guitar for a second. Sits on the drums, and then picks up the guitar and plays and sings. He was doing everything. It's like drums, guitar, and vocal all at the same time. It's like, holy cow, this guy's ridiculous. And we saw Taste, which is Rory Gallagher.
Yeah.
And I saw the band that had just changed their name from the Navy Blues to Jethro Tull.
Yeah, wow, that's right. Just at that period of time. That's incredible. So, that, and you were, as an Anglo guy, one of the things that I loved was covering on Heaven Tonight, California Man, which The Move were such a great band, but only really popular in England, with songs like Fire Brigade and, many other things that they had out. Tell me about when you decided to cover that, because your version of it is so good. It's got a little bit of a...
Just love the song. And going back to your the subscriptions, at one point, because there was no internet or whatever, and I wrote to Melody Maker, how does Roy Wood get that sound on his bass, or the Move get the sound on their bass on When Alice Comes Back to the Farm? And a couple of issues later, there's an answer from Roy Wood to Rick Nielsen, spelled wrong, from Rockford, Illinois. It's like, there's a little known fact. It's like, here, I was such a nut to want to know all this stuff about these things that I'm brave enough to write a letter thinking I'm going to get a good response. And I did in the magazine. And so I still, of course, I've never thrown anything away. So I still have that little clip that I could send to you just to prove it.
I think it's great. Now, it's amazing, getting to play in a band with your son, with Dax. And when I met Dax and talked to him, and I know he was a big fan of 120 Minutes, so we talked, and that was really cool because he knows that all comes full circle, me being a fan of yours since the very beginning. Seeing you guys play the In Color tour with UFO and Rush when I was a kid, and following the band all these years. What were you playing around the house? What music were you playing for your son? Because you love so many different styles of music, Rick. But
well,
go ahead.
That I don't recall so well. It's like, because when the kids were born, I think I was usually writing stuff, and usually late at night, so it wouldn't disturb them. But I would speak about, I don't know that I played that much. Dax, when he was born, he's the third of my four kids. He was he was classically trained on piano, but he liked his Metallica and he liked his Pantera, and then he broke his leg, and so he was laid up, and he got some of these guys to come and sign his leg, sign his cast. And I said to him, Dax, instead of learn what Charlie Watts does. I said, this will last you a lifetime. It's like, because you can, that's the basics. And because he wanted to play drums. I mean, it's like, I started out playing drums, but I can't play them anymore. But he just wanted to learn that stuff. And I never knew that any of my kids had ever listened to Cheap Trick. And, because we didn't talk about it at the house. I think they knew what I did, and they didn't let on that they liked anything I did. So it's like, I just treated, I was the father. I wasn't there. Even to this day, Dax calls me Rick, because he doesn't want to be, hey, Dad, where are we going, Dad? And all my kids were kind of like that. I would only help my kids in learning any sort of music if they tried to figure it out themselves. Because if I just show people stuff, they don't learn anything. They learn a little bit, but learning it yourself, like I'm self-taught myself. So it's like, I don't know what this chord is called, but here, look. I don't know if that answered your question at all.
Yeah, no, it's cool though that a lot of times it's like that. I talk to a lot of musicians and friends of ours. It's the same thing. Like, you're always dad. You're dad. But you're dad no matter what. And a lot of times it's the same thing. The kids don't let on that they're always listening to dad's music or want their own thing, and then eventually learn to appreciate it, right? So when did that moment come down where you were like, Dax, when do you want to play? How would you like to play with the band? Tell me about that. Well,
what had happened, Dax was in a couple different bands, and we knew that Bunny was going to have his back operated on. This is way long ago. And so we needed a replacement. He said, well, I know the stuff. And okay. So we took him on the road. He was on the road when we were on a tour with Aerosmith, replacing Bunny. And then years later, and he did a fine job. And then years later, I hadn't seen Dax for ages. He moved to LA, and he worked with Dick Dale for 3 years. And he worked with Brandy Carlisle and a bunch of different stuff. And one day that we had to play the next South by Southwest and the Austin City Limits. And we'd had we couldn't do it with Bunny anymore. So Dax was going to Europe the next day to work with Corey Chisel, doing something in Europe. And I had given Corey Chisel I'd helped him out in his career a bit. And I said, Dax, you got to come with us. I said, but you have to honor your commitments that you'd made. I said, but Corey owes me, so let's call him. And but I said, I want you to. And he called him and got his blessing to go with us. And that was 11 years ago. And there you go. We got the blessing, and we played both those shows, South by Southwest, with 100,000 people out in front, and Austin City Limits with no rehearsal, straight.
No rehearsal at all. That's amazing. So no. Dax had no time to learn the Cheap Trick song. So he
knew all the stuff. He still does. He knows all the. If we need to know what chord is next, that's A flat. Okay.
He knows. Yeah, Rick, it's amazing. I've always said, it's incredible how, the band is still so great live. I mean, you guys always kill it. Does it blow your mind sometimes when you look back and you see you've been playing well for so long, and just how incredible Robin's voice still is. Like, that's one of the things that's always stuck with me, is that when Robin, breaks into Off Wiedersehen or one of those other classic Cheap Trick songs, and I just go, wow. I mean, do you have little moments too where you just go, man, I can't believe he's still nailing this after all this time?
Oh yeah, he's unbelievable. Robin's a real singer. He was when he was in high school, he was in choir, and and he was, a real singer. And he actually took at least one. My father was an opera singer, and he gave Robin a vocal coach lesson. Not that he needed it, but my dad knew all the stuff about breathing with your diaphragm and this and that and stuff, and so he was legit. And so Robin's always been like a legit singer. I think it said on our first record, "A Man of 1,000 Voices" or 100 voices or whatever. He really is. I mean, he can sing anything, and by having the knowledge of, he's not just a shouter, but he shouts real good too.
He absolutely does. Now, and for you, Rick, you've met obviously a lot of your people that you've loved growing up, a lot of guitar heroes, people. Can you tell me who are some of the people that you've met in your career? There were people that you really admired and forged a good relationship with. Because, I mean, obviously, being in the studio with John Lennon, but there's so many people that you've met over the years. Who are some of your favorites and people that have stuck with you?
The first one I can think of that I went and saw the very first tour of the Yardbirds, and went and saw Jeff Beck and stood next to him because it was called Rock River Roller Rink on a Sunday afternoon or something like that. And because they played in Chicago earlier that day or later that day. I still have the ticket stubs from it. And that guy was so great. I mean, I loved the stuff that the Yardbirds did because they were like a bit different than the Who, and a bit different than the Kinks, and they had that guitar sound, and that guitar sound was knocked me out. And I read in, like, I think it was Hit Parader, "Jeff, how do you get that sound?" Well, I took a drumstick and shoved it through the speaker. I tried that. It didn't work. and then later, a few years later, I followed the Jeff Beck group. So I saw them, with Rod Stewart and Ronnie Wood and Mick Waller on drums. I saw them. I flew when I was in high school. I flew to Cleveland to see Jeff Beck group, and there was maybe 20 people in the audience. It was during the week. And then not long after that, I continued following him because he was my favorite then. And I happened to be in Chicago one night at the Kinetic Playground, and after the first set, Jeff's roadie had picked up his guitar to move it for whoever else was next, Jethro Tull or something like that, and he dropped it on the ground, and the head broke off it. And it's like, oh my God, me being a guitar collector and being Jeff Beck, my favorite guitar player, it was easier to get backstage those days. I went to the backstage and said, "You don't even know what just happened, but I'm Rick. I love Jeff, and I collect guitars. If he needs something, here's my number." And so didn't think anything of it. 2 weeks later, "Hey, Rick, still got the guitars?" "Yeah." "Hold on for Jeff Beck." "Hello? You still have guitars?" "Yeah, hold on." And he gave me back to his road manager, and I said, "Can you bring some to the show?" I said, "Sure. Where are you?" "Philadelphia." "Okay." So I picked up 5 guitars and a friend of mine, and we flew to Philadelphia and went right to the show. It was 10 years after, and the Vanilla Fudge playing at the same place. And I sold him a guitar, $350. Gibson Les Paul. It was the second Les Paul he had ever owned. And I stayed up late at night in the hotel room with him at the Holiday Inn. And that was kind of it. Then through the years, I kept in touch with him because I'd gotten his phone number from his manager, but I didn't bother him. But he had an accident, and I called him, and then here, let's move ahead through the couple of years. And we'd actually played with him in Germany with a way new group and stuff. And he knew I was a big fan. And but 3 years ago, I get an email. "Rick, this is Jeff. You want to give me a call? Here's my number." I'm thinking, here's 50 years later, Jeff Beck is contacting me. And so then we did. And
Rick, I love that story about Jeff Beck. It's incredible. You know, I mean, it's funny because I have people reach out to me who you're their hero, and young musicians. One of the things that I remember too, when you guys went back and were doing the first 3 albums years back, there were a ton of bands that were literally fighting to be the opening act on those shows. I know there were some shows at Irving Plaza. Pearl Jam was one of them. I know that they wanted to do it in color. Do you remember who the other bands were that ended up opening for you? But I mean, you see how many bands you influenced.
Let's see. Well, let's see. Here's one. Meatloaf opened for us in Chicago, and he got booed off the stage and said he would never do an opening act again.
Yeah, for you guys, yeah. That's. I mean, well, Chicago. I've been to your shows in Chicago, and I mean, you are been a Chicago band forever. Who there's no question about it.
Yeah, but we got to be good, otherwise, we don't just. We have no laurels,
Yeah.
Or morals, it's like we.
I'm at
the play like it's like it means something, because it does.
So Rick, I know that you guys you were scheduled to go over You Stone Temple Pilots and Bush, and I was just working with Gavin Rossdale on this TV show. So, is that tour going to happen of Australia? Because I heard there was some talk that it was up in the air.
Well, it'll be the 3rd time that we're scheduled to go. So, I just heard now that it's been delayed again. So. Oh,
it has been postponed. Okay, I just want to let people.
I got a text from Dean DeLeo this morning. He says he was looking forward to putting suntan lotion on my shoulders. So.
Yeah, Dean's the best. I know him because he's a Jersey Shore guy like me, so I've known him for him and Robert forever. Even though they're California guys for many, many years. They started out in Jersey. I know. I hope that gets rescheduled again soon because I mean it's just miss the live shows and miss seeing you play and miss seeing you guys come out and rock.
I miss seeing me play. I don't like sitting around the house. I don't mind it, but I know we should be doing something else. It's like I don't really like talking about myself anyhow. It's like, so Rick, what's this? You, Matt. I've known you a long time. It's like. You always ask good questions, and now the internet gets in our way.
But I enjoy talking to you because obviously you and I always have gotten on really well, and because I've been a fan from day one, and that's the thing. It's been with you guys for the whole duration, which is great, And so I'm excited when you put out a record like this new record, In Another World, and it's got so many great songs on it. I mean, this record rocks. Can you tell me, Light Up the Fire, tell me about that song because we've been playing it and people are saying, man, this song is really powerful. Can you tell me about writing that tune?
Sort of. I mean, it was kind of a riff and we kind of worked at it. And, I tell you about my influences wearing them on my sleeve. In the middle of that song, it's like it had the space for the solo and music so well. I copied my bad interpretation of Happenings 10 years time ago.
Yardbirds.
Yardbirds with Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page on that one. And Jeff Beck does a solo. And if you listen to the first part of the solo I do the same solo that, I got to admit that I stole it right from there. Like I said, I don't do as great a job, but it's just the song. When I got to this part, was like, I got to do this part. What? It's like cool.
No, it came out great on there. It fits perfectly, and that's such a classic. Those different lineups of the Yardbirds were so great, and that was a great period right there when they were together on that single.
Yeah. I did a tribute. Jimmy Page was getting an award, and I got asked to go and play at this thing, and it was up in Seattle, and had all these great players that were going to get up there, and they were going to do songs that he was known for, and all these guys are doing all this Led Zeppelin stuff, and real heavy, long songs and everything. I thought, well, I'm going to do Happenings 10 years time ago. That was the first single he was on. It's like, it's over in about 2.5 minutes. And I know he'll like me more than the other people by doing that.
Yeah, that's great. And did he? How was his reaction when you did that song?
Oh, it was great. Because later, not that I did a great job on it, but I did all the parts on it. It's like, when you get to the end, it's like, then they asked Jimmy to come up and play something. And so we were going to do rock and roll, Zeppelin things. And there's a couple of videos of, we're talking amongst ourselves getting ready to do it because we did no rehearsal on it. It's like, and he says, "Oh my God, I don't have a guitar here." I said, "Here, take mine." And I handed him my checkerboard Explorer. He said, "Oh, I can't take that." Because it was, sponsored by Gibson, I think.
Yeah.
So he couldn't take a Hamer checkerboard Explorer with him. So, but he's got a daughter named Charlotte, and so do I.
Yeah, I mean, you always travel. How many guitars do you travel with, Rick? Like when you're on tour, how many are there?
On tour, probably about 25. We have two sets of gear. We have an A rig and a B rig. The A rig has about 25 and the B rig has about 25. That way we can do a show on the East Coast and one on the West Coast the next day.
And do you keep them like at your home when they come back, or do you have like a place, like a warehouse kind of thing where you keep your stuff that's just for touring? Do those come back on your time off and you have them like around you so they're nearby?
I have over 500 guitars, so it's like, I don't have enough room for all of them, but we have a couple warehouses full of stuff too. But yeah, they don't stay in the semis forever, and so yeah, they do come home. I rotate what I take on the road, anyhow. And here's a quick story. I still buy guitars. I mean, I had 500 a couple weeks ago, and then now I have 502 because I bought a guitar that I've been chasing for a number of years. I bought it from Paul Weller from the Jam. I got a four. I have 4 of the 1962 and 63 Dwight cornets, and that was the same guitar that Steve Marriott used to play.
Oh yeah,
it's good enough for Steve Marriott. It's good enough for me.
Right, you were a big Small Faces fan, right? And
oh yeah, and their first album is actually, of all time. That's my favorite album of all time, the English version of it, because it sounds like the party's going on there. And it had the one song, "Give Me," I think it's called "Give Me Love" or whatever. It's where Led Zeppelin at the end of
You Need Love. Was it You Need Love? Right? Was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, You Need Love. I think it's
you need love.
Yeah, Zeppelin definitely borrowed that from there. And it's funny because yeah, like I remember being on a plane with a Mac with Ian McLagan one time. We were just talking about it, and I said, people always ask you about your B-sides. He goes, "Well, we just threw them together. We don't remember those B-sides back at the time because people would always ask him about them." But he was a great guy. I'm sure you got to hang out with him too, Ian McLagan.
Yeah, I did. I actually played with him at the Continental Club in Austin years ago. Those guys were also funny. I hung around with Marriott too. We almost got thrown out of a Sunset Marquee together.
Yeah, that's great. That's a classic story. It's amazing. So, obviously, I'm a huge Weller fan too. Paul Weller, the Jam, such a great band. That guitar that you got from him, did he use that in the Jam days? Was it early on?
It was early on because I'd been in contact. I'd never met Paul, but I knew the guitar he had, and I talked to the guy in his road crew, and that's how I found out that he's not playing this anymore. I said, well, I'm a collector, and I'd like to get it. And he said, well, on and on and on. It was about 3.5 years from the time that I pursued it till now, and my friend who lives in England went and picked it up for me. And he said Paul wasn't even there then, and they're good friends.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's look it up. It's called a Dwight cornet. It's like, it was made by Epiphone, but the reason it's a Dwight is the dealership that sold the most Flying V's in 1958 was a place in East St. Louis, and because he sold so many, he was allowed to get his own brand so it's exactly like an Epiphone cornet, but it's a Dwight cornet, and he used to give lessons, and they were $147 new, and they only made 72 of them, I think.
Wow, that's amazing.
Maybe 47, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I could spend days looking at your guitars. Obviously, you're 502 now. That's incredible. But that's great. It's you're
cutting out. I can't hear anything.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know what, Rick? We're gonna end it now. Anyways, it'll be easier for you, and they gotta use the studio. But I just want to say thank you so much for doing the interview. It's always great catching up with you. I want to tell you that.
Yeah, good stuff. You know so much, and I know so little. So together we can, turns into something okay.
Now you know a lot. Absolutely. That's why I always enjoy talking to you. And thank you for all the great records and great music you've given us and live shows over the years. It's always good to have you.
Man, you're the best, and you're looking good.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Rick. It's great to see you, and I'll be seeing you soon on the road.
Background too. That's amazing.
Yeah, I love what we do. KLOS is just it's the best. You can't beat it. And this is the people that work here and put this entire thing together are absolutely amazing. I love the crew here, so it's great. So I'm glad you got to see it. So Rick, take care and listen. Say hi to Robin and everybody for me. All right?
I sure will.
All right, I'll talk to you soon, Rick.
Say hi to Marcy for me.
Oh, I will. I'll definitely say hi to her. All right, you got it, Rick. Thanks so much.
All right, buddy.
All right, take care now. You got it. Thank you so much, Rick. Rick Nielsen of Cheap Trick. The new album is In Another World. It is available now, and you are watching KLOS New and Approved. I'm Matt Pinfield. Thanks so much for joining us.